your name, please?
Alan Dawson.
And Alan, you said that you were at Thoresby during the Second World War.
Yes.
Can you remind us?
Yes,
what,
that's right. And I was
what you
here
were
up
doing
to it
here?
closing down.
So you were driving Captain Stone's.
Yes, I was driving captain.
For the what was the
Elman Utility it was.
Yeah. And what was the regiment called?
RAC, Royal Army Service Corps.
Right. And your responsibilities were
Just driving him about.
yeah, and he was checking all the
All
places
these buildings what been
that had been commandeered by the
yeah.
regiments to see what damage had been done.
And there were some lovely houses.
Yeah. And what sort of damage had been done, do you think, from your observations?
Take a staircase in a house. It was all rough wood, so it all had to be made decent again for the people to go back in.
Yeah.
Oh yes. Oh yes, it all had to be done through the army, put back together as it used to be.
Yes. I bet that was a big job.
Yeah.
Can you remember what kind of state was it in at Thoresby at the end of the war then? Yeah.
Oh, it was lovely round here.
Yeah, but had it been badly damaged, do you think?
No, this hasn't been badly damaged.
No, compared to a lot of places then.
As I say, we used to have his meals in cellar kitchen.
Yeah.
And there used to be this big hall, like a big fireplace, big settees, and at night, after tea, we used to go in and sit down there. So a grand set of lads I was with.
Yeah.
We used to play football at the football field. We used to play protest camp.
Yeah.
There was blokes there, but there was ATS as well.
Yeah. Had most of the regiments left Thoresby then at that time?
Yes. There was only the, you can say what, about 15 of us here.
So I realised that there wasn't very much future to me managing a farm for a young widow who could do anything with her life and could remarry or whatever. And so I started looking for alternatives. And I heard that there was an opportunity at Thoresby through a friend of mine who knew the retiring land agent, Mr. Hubert Argos. And anyway, applied for the job. I was interviewed and was lucky enough to get it. Well, farming-wise, the place was wilderness. It had been tank training ground. Was still an ammunition dump. Had never been cultivated since time immemorial. Had been a deer park. The bracken was 6 feet high. The thorn bushes were growing all over the place. There was remnants of old forest oaks lying everywhere. And somehow or other we had to turn this into a farm because the country was in a parlous condition. We were short of food, we hadn't the money to buy food abroad, and the nation had to live on its own resources.
Yeah. Was there anything still there in terms of the ammunition or vehicles from that still needed clearing away?
The place was still a vast ammunition dump. Every road verge on either side had little Nissen huts, which were stacked high with anything from 16-inch naval shells down to 22.22 ammunition, all of it live. Detonators, 36 grenades, mortar bombs, explosive charges, you name it, it was there. And so we then had to develop somehow or other techniques of doing it ourselves. we couldn't buy because you weren't allowed to. Also, finances weren't available to buy the very expensive machinery that the War Agricultural, the government basically had been using. So we had to develop a technique of our own, which, after a bit of trial and error, we managed to devise a much cheaper way of doing it.
How was that? How did you?
We used much lighter tractors, which when they hit an obstruction stopped, as opposed to the very heavy, powerful machinery that other people were using, contractors were using, which when they hit something, everything went smash and everything was broken, which a vastly expensive repair bill.
Yeah.
And labour was, in relative terms, compared with other costs in those days, farm labour was relatively cheap. So we could afford to put a number of people onto reclaiming what one man had done prior with a vast, heavy machinery. Mm-hmm. We were growing oats because they could stand a certain amount of acidity.
Were they one of the earliest crops that you planted?
Rye, which again will stand fairly high levels of acidity, and also the government in its wisdom had decided that we should provide something that could be used in the rye vita factories.
Ooh.
So we grew rye, which all went to rye vita. When we had the coronation, we wanted to roast an ox for the village, one of our own, which we reared up. Beautiful Aberdeen Angus bullock it was too. Although I said, what shouldn't I selected it. It was a lovely one. We had to get a permit to get it killed by a local butcher. And he killed it. And he got all the offal and so forth, which suited him quite well. It's a bit of an anecdote, but when we started in pulling peas, we used to grow pulling peas latterly, because again, a bit of nitrogen fixing capacity of the peas. And most of them went to bachelors. Some of them went in nets too. Ended up in Bradford wholesale market, a lot of firm called William Jarvis and Son. But anyway, these women pulled peas by piecework. And of course their nets had to be weighed. And of course I had a Lincolnshire foreman, Fred Sutton. Fred, he looked a bit dozy, but he wasn't half as dozy as he looked. And he'd been born and bred in Lincolnshire and among piece workers, and he knew what the tricks were. And he said, Mister, he always used to call me Mister. He said, Mister, we're going to have to check some of these bags. I said, oh, how come, Fred? I think there's a few stones getting in bottom. And so I said, Fred, you're the foreman, you've got a free hand, I'll support you. But I said, make sure you're right if you want me to support you. So the first day, I think Fred caught 3 of them at it. And so he took them to Bertha Edison. And Bertha said, right, side of the field, you sit there until the transport takes you home, or else you bloody well walk. I can hear her saying it yet. And so they had to sit at the side of the field, and you'll never be back here again. And she would never take them on again.